Hello, my name is Colt Smith. I'm with the Utah Division of Drinking Water, and I'm going to be talking about the electronic distribution of consumer confidence reports. We'll give a brief overview of the history of the CCR, the principle behind it, and then we'll talk about the EPA's distribution requirements and how they've interpreted the rule for electronic distribution. We'll likewise talk about Utah's plan for implementation of electronic distribution of consumer confidence reports, as well as some help in preparing and what you should look for, some of the pitfalls with electronic distribution of consumer confidence reports. The principle of the CCR is that it's full disclosure. If you think of it, and it's something that comes up a lot when we talk about CCRs, I know it tends to be something that operators really dislike. It's strictly paperwork, and they don't necessarily, or people don't necessarily see the value in it as a protective of public health. I like to think of it as similar to a nutrition facts label that you would find on any food product that's available in a store. It's basic full disclosure. It covers all the ingredients that we put in the food, and though we may not look upon these, but others do. Not everyone looks at that and decides whether or not they're going to purchase that product or whether or not it's safe for them based on the label, but a large number of people do. Look at this as a sales pitch against bottled water. This is our ability to say that the product that we put out through the tap is better than the bottled water that's put in the store. It's going to be something that I would strongly recommend, and people do look at. I know that in my own personal conversations with people, the moment that I tell them what I do, one of the first things they always bring up is, "Oh, I get that thing in the mail every year. Is my water safe?" And well, yes. And if you looked at that, you would know that. There is some principle there. The underlying thing is that it's not for us to decide the actions of others. If others choose to ignore consumer confidence report or to not look at it, that's entirely upon them, but it's up to us to put that out there and to use it as our time to be proud of what we've done. The history of the CCR, and this is important. The CCR was promulgated in 1998 as an enhancement of the Safe Drinking Water Act's Public Right to Know section. If you think about the world in 1998 too, it'll make more sense as we go forward. The statutes and the standards that were set forth for electronic distribution. The internet was still in its infancy. Most homes didn't have it. Very few cities had websites. Large municipalities didn't even have anything that was comparable to what we have today, where today the internet is largely the biggest way that we communicate. Some caveats of it: all community water systems must directly distribute a CCR by July 1st. They are then required to submit a certification letter to the primacy agency, which in this case is the Utah Division of Drinking Water, by October 1st, stating the method by which they distributed the CCR. Most systems send those to the Division of Drinking Water at the same time by July 1st. In January of 2011, President Obama issued an executive order for all executive branch agencies, EPA included, as well as any other regulatory agency, to review its rules and processes to see if there was any redundancies or revisit them and do some cleanup, as well as gearing an eye towards public disclosure and openness in government. In August of 2011, the CCR was reviewed in conjunction with that and in part with EPA oversight and feedback from nationwide stakeholders. The main revisions to the CCR rule centered around electronic distribution. Some of the minimum requirements, the required minimum components of a CCR are listed here. You need to list the sources of the water, the definition of the terms, maximum contaminant level, exemptions, other things that people outside of the water industry might not know. You're required to list any D-text for regulated contaminants. That's anything that you're going to have tested for and in the previous testing cycle. So it's not just the year that you've tested for, it's the entire testing cycle before that. Perhaps you haven't had RADs done in 5 years, but you had a D-text. You're still going to be required to submit that and put that on there until your next go-round on sampling, and then you'll update it for the most recent sampling results, but only the D-text. You must put something in your compliance status with national primary drinking water regulations. Are you an approved system? Are you unapproved? Are you in compliance? That's also going to put about putting up any of your violations that you've received in the past year for monitoring, MCL violations, or any of the like. Information on monitoring for cryptosporidium, radon, and unregulated contaminants for which monitoring is required. In Utah, that would largely also include sodium, and sodium sulfates, things that don't have an MCL but are still tested and required to be tested for in the state of Utah. Statement that the presence of contaminants does not necessarily pose a risk to public health and can be obtained through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency hotline. Likewise, there is some required language governing lead and a statement for those with immunocompromised who drinking water contaminants might pose a greater risk. There's a multilingual requirement that I get a few phone calls on every year, systems wondering if they have to produce a CCR in a foreign language or non-English language. The answer to that is what we do is systems with a large population of non-English speaking residents must include language stating the importance of the CCR and contact information on whether they may obtain assistance obtaining a copy in the appropriate language. Our agency and most agencies use the threshold of 5 to 10% of the population, or 1,000 people. In the state of Utah, this is largely going to be Spanish format. This doesn't mean that you have to produce a separate CCR in Spanish. It does mean that you have to put a language requirement in there stating that if someone calls and requests a Spanish language one, that you then must produce a CCR in Spanish. If someone should do that, you can always contact our office and we can help obtaining resources and being able to translate that. Some groundwater rule changes to the CCR. There was really only one. Systems are now required to list any of their unresolved significant deficiencies in their annual CCR. That means that they will put the date that the deficiency was discovered. That'll be the date of the most recent sanitary survey in most cases. It'll require them to take the actions being taken to resolve the deficiency and the date by which the deficiency will be resolved. This is most commonly done in a table format. The rural water template for the state of Utah has been updated to include that language. Some delivery requirements, and this is directly geared towards this presentation. Mail or otherwise deliver one CCR to each customer by July 1st of every year. In addition, you must make a good faith effort to reach non-bill paying customers. This would be people who live in an apartment building, university students, people who might not receive a water bill, but are still going to be on your water system and receiving your drinking water. Deliver the CCR to other agencies as prescribed by the primacy agency. This would mean if you are wholesaling water, then you must supply that who you are selling your water to with a copy of the CCR data so they can generate that and include it in their own CCR if they're a community system. You are also required to submit a copy of the CCR to the Division of Drinking Water by July 1st. And you must always make the CCR available upon request. Likewise, you are required to keep 3 back years of CCRs in your archives at all times. Some more delivery requirements. Some of the population, now this is not a definitive list, but it's ones that are going to pertain most directly to the electronic distribution. For populations greater than 100,000 persons, you must post the CCR on the internet. Now keep in mind that this rule was created in 1998, and so it would have been larger systems that would have had websites. I can't believe that under further revision that's not going to be dropped to include smaller systems, and many systems already take that initiative now. There is a small systems mailing waiver. All systems larger than this are required to mail it directly to a customer, but for customers with fewer than 10,000 persons served, they must publish the CCR in at least one local newspaper and notify customers that the CCR will not be mailed, and they can make the report available upon request. For communities of fewer than 500 persons served, they must notify the customers that the CCR is available on request, and at least once per year provide door-to-door delivery or public posting that report is available. That would be stating on a water bill or in a public location that there is a CCR available upon request. All right, diving into electronic CCR delivery options. Now this is lifted largely from an EPA webinar on the topic of electronic CCR distribution, and this is going to go over some of the methods by which we're going to do that. Keep in mind there's a lot of repetition in here, and it's lifted from the EPA website, and they do tend to repeat themselves in their webinars. There's a couple of methods by which you can approach CCR delivery. You can continue to mail a paper copy if that's what you're comfortable with and that's what you've been doing. You can send a mail notification that the CCR is available on a website via URL. That's Uniform Resource Locator language, or just a normal internet link. You can email the direct URL to the CCR. So you'd be sending out an email with a link that would send them directly to the CCR. You can email the CCR as a file attachment. That is another option where they would download it in a PDF format and they would have the CCR available to them. Additional electronic delivery that satisfies otherwise directly delivered. This is, in my mind, largely geared towards the military population, bases that might have other forms of communication besides normal email or website, something along the lines of an instant messenger program. Another option is to simply send the CCR as an embedded email message, message, and we'll talk all about these in a little more details as the presentation continues. The requirement of the CCR is that they be directly delivered. Now this is important because there was not a change to the CCR rule, but simply a reinterpretation of what directly delivered meant. In 1998, directly delivered largely meant mail delivery. In 2013, directly delivered could very easily mean electronic delivery. Electronic delivery must provide the CCR in a direct manner. Like I said, repetition. Public water systems can use separate mailings, utility billings with a direct URL to meet their CCR requirement, so long as the URL is prominently displayed and a notice is provided explaining the link. So if you're going to send out a paper message, please realize that the link has to be prominent. It has to be easily identified. It can't be buried in the text of a billing, and it can't be very long. The URL can't be so long that it would be cumbersome upon someone to do it. It should be something simple, something along the lines of www.saltlakecity.gov/CCR2013. If a community water system is aware of a customer's inability to receive a CCR by an electronic method, it must provide the CCR by an alternative method allowed by rule, i.e. direct mailing. If you were going to email and you know that someone didn't have an email or you didn't have an email for that customer, you would have to send it to them by paper. If you knew that an area of your water system doesn't have internet connection, you must figure out another method by which you're going to deliver the CCR. In this case, it's going to be direct mailing. Community water system must prominently display a message and the direct URL and all mail notifications of the CCR availability. So you must provide that with a message explaining what the CCR is and promoting readership through water quality, or a statement about the importance of water quality. Some CCR methods that are explicitly not allowed. A customer must not have to move to another web page to find any CCR content. You can't send them to your web page and then require them to search CCR 2013. It's got to be a direct link. You can't send them to the Division of Drinking Water's website to receive definitions or otherwise content that would be required by law in the CCR. Social media is not acceptable. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of the other methods by which we socially communicate are not approved methods. Now that doesn't mean that you can't post the availability through your Facebook or Twitter page of your water system, but it does not meet the public notice requirement as allowed by law. You must use one of these others. Automated phone calls are also not allowed. Your mailing, we'll look at the example of mailing a paper copy. Community water system mails a paper copy of the CCR to all bill-paying customers. In addition, mail to those who request paper instead of electronic delivery. In this method, you're going to be sending out a paper notification that the CCR is available electronically through a direct URL, but you must provide a paper copy to anyone who requests it rather than electronic delivery. Mail a notification that the CCR is available via direct URL. In this is similar to the mailing of the paper copy, in that you're going to be sending it out to all of your bill payers, usually on a water bill. URL should be prominently displayed, and it should be short. This can't be buried in the text, like I stated earlier. An option for the customer to request a paper copy. There has to be something there citing that if I would like a paper copy, I can request and how I would go about that. And including a short statement about water quality to promote readership. The email of a direct URL to the CCR. In this scenario, a community water system emails all of their bill-paying customers, or all the customers that they've gathered an email address for, a notification that CCR is available and provides a direct URL to the CCR on a publicly available site. This means, along with the next one, that the URL is one click and it takes them to the CCR. You can't have them click it and then require them to have a login or a password to reach the CCR. The email has to have one link, one click, CCR. There must be a plan in place to deal with email bounce backs. Respond by sending the customer a paper copy would be the best scenario for that, or having a method by which you're going to deal with email bounce backs should you have a faulty email or an incorrectly entered email address. Emailing the CCR is an attachment. In this scenario, a community water system mails the CCR as an electronic file. I'm telling you just to use PDF. There's other formats available. PDF is the most standard. It's going to be the most easily opened and read and utilized. Please use a PDF. Don't email it as an editable format. Don't email it as a Word or a Google Doc or a WordPerfect document that they can go in and edit. Make sure your file is small enough to get through email data throttles. You shouldn't have an enormous CCR. They're generally small files. There's not a lot of images in them, even on the larger ones that use a lot of pictures in theirs. Don't zip the file. Now, this is where you would compress the file and require them to download it and then use an unzip program to reach the file. You shouldn't have to do that. That's most commonly applied to bunches of files or multiple files or large files. But just in case that's standard practice with your agency, don't do it. CCR embedded in the message. And this is where you're just receiving the email, and in the body of the email is the CCR. The community water system emails the entire text of the CCR, tables, and required language in the email. This, in my mind, is probably the simplest method to get it out there. There is the risk of choking an email system, and you're going to be required to have your users are going to be required to accept image files or HTML formatted emails. This is most common with Gmail, with the Google Mail program. It requires users to opt in to receiving images. Delivery CCR or CCR delivery approaches for bill paying customers. Now these are the ones that you have record of and are easy to reach. Paper delivery. You can paper the CCR delivery with a customer option to request electronic, and this is going to be a big one. You're going to want people to opt into electronic delivery through public outreach, email messages, however you're going to get people to opt in. And the second is the electronic delivery with the customer option to request a paper copy. And these, basically what this slide is explaining is that you have two methods: paper with the option to request electronic, and electronic with the option to request paper. Both of those are both rehashing what we've already covered. Planning your CCR delivery program. Research customer technology capabilities. What's the internet access speed of the people who you're going to be submitting the CCR to? Past experience with e-bill pay, participation, other electronic communications efforts, current website usage. What's your social media presence? What is your system's technical capabilities? Are you able to send mass emails? Have you done this in the past? Does your system have a website? Will your network support internet delivery? Do you have personnel with the capabilities to create an embedded email document? Do you know how to do that, or do you know someone who can? Does your community water system have a social media presence? That's a good indicator of how technically savvy both you and your customer base are. Quick checklist for planning a CCR delivery method. You're going to need to convert the CCR to an electronic format. Deliver paper and electronic CCRs to customers and other required parties. Initially, a mix of paper and e-copies will be necessary. Make a good faith effort to deliver the CCR to non-bill paying customers, gathering information via outreach, etc., and submit a copy of the CCR and certification to the primacy agency. In that case, it's the Utah Division of Drinking Water. And please submit that through DDW reports at utah.gov. Utah's implementation. Now this section here is specifically regarding the method by which the Utah Division of Drinking Water plans to implement its regulation of electronic distribution of consumer confidence reports. There is some initial concern about this. One of the reasons that we've conducted this training and prepared it is that there was a rumor that electronic distribution was now allowed, and that meant you could just put it on a website and forget it. You could just send it out as an email and forget it. There's a little bit more regulation that's going to go on with that, largely because we have to maintain our primacy and meet EPA standards, as well as we want to make sure that systems are actually following through. Utah is currently working with the Rural Water Association and several community water systems to create and refine this process. As this change is further reviewed, the process and implementation of the electronic distribution may change. Keep in mind that this is all draft language. This is all our initial pass and all of our sort of beginning process for creating this. This could change, regulations could change, we could make it simpler, or it could be more complicated based on what we see. We're currently doing some piloting programs that hopefully will fix this. Systems will have to apply to the Utah Division of Drinking Water for approval of electronic distribution. Applications for approval will have to be submitted to DDW by December 31st of the year prior to distribution. If you wish to do electronic distribution in 2014, you're required to submit the application by New Year's Eve 2013. What we're going to require is we're going to require conducting a poll. That's probably a bad term for it, but it's the best one that came to mind while I was creating this presentation. But this is going to be some method by which you're getting people to opt into electronic distribution. There are communities who participate actively in their local towns' festivals with their distribution in their water department, handing out water bottles or having people sign up physically. This could be an email, this could be a website, but you're going to require to outline in the application the method by which you're going to ask customers to opt into electronic distribution. You're going to need to write in detail your plan you're going to have in place to deal with bounce back emails. Mail the person direct copy, contact by phone to get the current email, hand deliver, send by owl. I mean, however you're going to do it, please note that you're going to be required to outline that plan to us. Write how you'll make a good faith effort to reach non-bill paying customers. Keep in mind that we regulate systems of varying sizes, geographic areas, populations, and we didn't want to set out a hard and fast rule for every system that would make it impossible for every system to participate in electronic distribution. We want you to outline how you could best do that. For smaller systems, you may be able to go and actually gather email information for an apartment complex. If you have a university there, you could work with the university staff to have them distribute it through student emails. We want you to outline what the good faith effort you're going to do to reach those non-bill paying customers are. And again, just submit the form to DDW by December 31st. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this, there are two portions to the Consumer Conference Report, the certification letter and the report itself. Normally they've been submitted together. With this electronic distribution, we're going to require a couple of things that might limit your ability to submit them together. They might not, depending on how early you're able to get them out. Including your certification letter, what efforts you made to reach bounce back, non-deliverables, emails including how many were rejected. So if you had email bounce back, how many of those were rejected, and how did you reach and outreach to those bounce back emails? The number of visits to your CCR website. We want to know the analytics by which and how many visits and clicks you had on your CCR website. We want the URL of your CCR website. We want to know where we can find it. And this letter still needs to be submitted to the division by October 1st of the reporting year. If you have any questions, my name is Colt Smith with the Utah Division of Drinking Water. You can reach me at 801-536-4155 or through email at acsmith@utah.gov. There should be a short quiz accompanying this presentation by which you can fill out and receive your CEUs for it. If you're interested in participating in the pilot program, please contact me through email and let me know that you're interested in participating in an electronic distribution pilot program. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all of your hard work. We at the division are always really grateful for the hard work that you do in conjunction with us in protecting and providing public health and safe drinking water. Thank you again, and I hopefully look forward to seeing you.